Okay, when discussing learners between the ages of 11 and 14, it's important to start with some science about the extraordinary brain development that happens for this cohort. I think it's important to know what's going on. This helps learners and the people facilitating the education of those learners. Now, I'm going to start with science, but don't be put off if you feel like you can't wait for me to get to the how to. So it's not surprising that the fastest period of brain development occurs between the ages of 0 and 3. The second fastest period is kind of surprising, though. That is, unless you're in the thick of working with them. The second fastest period of brain development occurs between the ages of 11 and 14. Changes are happening in the prefrontal cortex, limbic system, amygdala. Children between the ages of 11 and 14 have a large jump in the level of growth hormones, progesterone, and either estrogen or testosterone in their bodies. Synaptic pruning is occurring. This affects connections that are important for how the brain communicates. And then a process called myelination is making the connections where a great deal of communication is happening better protected. Phew. That's a lot. All of these changes in the brain occur at the same time their bodies are changing. And let's be honest, we live in a culture that is not always kind about bodies and appearances. So it can be really tough when yours is changing. It can impact the feelings and behaviors of this age group. It can make it harder to be them. Oops, sorry. All the changes happening in their brain tells us that it is sometimes a snarly mess in there. And that's one of the reasons I bring this up. I really want you have to understand that sometimes it's just so chaotic in their brain. They're doing the best they can. Think about a time when you had a lot going on at the same time you were being asked to do an important job. For example, academic learning is a good one. My guess is it was a stressful time for you. All these changes, along with the changing body, can be scary, confusing, and exciting. It really is an extraordinary time. Before getting to some practical advice, and I promise I've got lots of practical advice, let's talk science. There's not going to be a quiz at the end. Woohoo! I just want to drive home everything that's going on in their brains as a way to help you when things get intense, stinky, and argumentative. A teacher and parent who understands can help academically, socially, and emotionally. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for intelligently regulating thoughts, actions, and emotions through extensive connections with other brain regions. It plays a crucial role in executive functioning skills, impulse control, working memory, attention and focus, and social cognition, where individuals better understand the perspectives of others and how to navigate social situations. It's important to understand that the prefrontal cortex and the skills I just listed do not all come together uniformly for your middle school student. Some students mature faster than others, and this development is affected by external factors like environment and experiences. The limbic system is a complex set of brain structures right here in the middle. During middle school, the limbic system undergoes notable changes which have a profound impact on a student's behavior, emotional regulation, and social interactions. The hippocampus, a key part of the limbic system, is essentially for memory formation and learning, allowing students to retain and recall information more effectively. That means that metacognitive skills naturally improve during the middle school years. Another part of the limbic brain's another part of the limbic system is the hypothalamus as well as the basal ganglia. These are involved in the brain's reward system and motivation. This can influence a middle school student's behavior and academic performance. The limbic system is also closely connected to the body's stress response. The development of this area leads children at this age to experience increased stress when they feel pressured academically, socially, or physically. Now, if you have a or if you have a student who hasn't quite got to middle school yet, and they're somebody that feels anxiety, this is something I want you to really be aware of. That it's actually biologically likely that they're going to be more anxious academically, socially, and physically. The amygdala is a part of the limbic system. This is the area of the brain responsible for processing emotions. During early adolescence, this area of the brain tends to be more active, leading to heightened emotional responses that can result in increased emotional intensity, mood swing, and yep, impulsive behavior. This is the group, this is the age where it's biological, the reason that they become more impulsive. Now, there are two important processes that you should also understand. Oh, it's our last brain science. Now that we're going to apply it. But there's really two important processes that you need to be aware of as you're educating this 11 to 14-year-olds kids as they go through adolescence. And they accompany the development of the prefrontal cortex and limbic system. They're called synaptic pruning and myelination. A synapse is the junction between nerve cells. It's where they can communicate with itself and to the rest of the body. As you can see at birth, there aren't many synapses. By 6 years old, there are many more connections. This makes sense if you think about the amount of information that's come into a person's brain between the ages of 0 and 6. Starting at around 6, a process called synaptic pruning occurs. Synaptic pruning is the natural process that occurs mainly during adolescence, where the brain removes synapses. And you can see between that this is 6, this is 14. You can see that there's fewer synapses. Synaptic pruning helps to refine neural circuits and increase network efficiency. Myelination refers to the process by which synapses are coated with a fatty substance called myelin. Myelin acts as a protective sheath that enhances the speed and efficiency of electrical impulses, allowing nerve signals to be transmitted more rapidly and accurately along the nerve fibers. Synapses that are regularly used are protected through myelination. Studies show that well-used synapses are stabilized as well as protected through this process. Now, synaptic pruning and myelination allow synapses to increase coordinated communication by 3,000 times. Whoa, think about that. What if I told you your internet connection could be 3,000 times faster? Wow. That's what happens in the brain through this process. The connections that are not pruned are better coordinated and balanced for better integration. This means that the adolescent brain is becoming more efficient with less noise and an improved ability to integrate across existing synapses. Whoops. Synaptic pruning leads researchers in this area to consider this a time where you use it or lose it. This has important implications for learning. As Charo Ruida of the University of Granada in Spain puts it, learning optimizes the brain for learning. If you're working at learning during this time, the synapses that are kept and strengthened are those that are important for learning. If your child is regularly engaged in the act of learning, those synapses do not get pruned. They stay active and alive, and they are then protected. And a focus on learning at a time when connections are being pruned is important, because as the brain remodels, it selects and then eliminates unused connections. This results in a loss of neurons. Now, I wanted to provide a non-technical picture in your brain to help you understand synaptic pruning and myelination. At 4 one morning, I woke up and thought, aha, a messy room. This is a great analogy to help you understand what happens in the adolescent brain. The synapses of a 6-year-old is like every toy a child has ever played with is sitting on the floor of a room. It never gets picked up. Every time a toy is put on the floor, it is available to be played with at any time. This allows for a maximum number of options for learning, and it has serious implications for learning in grade school, because if a toy isn't put on the floor, it isn't available. Didn't put Legos out there? Well, that's a synapse that isn't even available to be pruned away. I'm going to get to that when I talk about the elementary school talk. There's a problem with this messy room. As you know, if you have ever had one, you can't find things. It's incredibly inefficient. Now, you might wonder why there would be extra circuits made and then pruned away. Computer models suggest that there are significant benefits to cognition when synapses are overgenerated and then pruned. You can see how this might happen. Young learners are a blank slate. They're a tabula rasa. They're they're exposed to many different situations and experiences, and over time they come to understand, the brain comes to understand which are important for that person's life situation and which aren't. Synapses that are not used then are eliminated. The synapses that are left are then protected and strengthened. So the 14-year-old brain will be a lot cleaner, and the toys that get used will be better than new. Before going to my advice about teaching middle school, I want to share a bit about estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and growth hormones and how those affect the adolescent brain as they go through puberty. Those hormones don't just affect the body, they also affect the brain. And people are incredibly sensitive to small changes in the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and growth hormone. There's a complex interplay between the endocrine system and the developing brain. Studies show estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone influence learning, intelligence, memory, and the behavior of adolescents. These hormones have been shown to help the growth of neural connections and synapses. They also play a role in pruning and optimizing brain function. Interestingly, there's a link between estrogen and verbal memory and language skills, while testosterone may be linked to spatial and mathematical abilities. As all of us know through experience, these hormones also have a huge effect on emotional regulation, and that also impacts learning. The amount of growth hormone produced also increases during puberty. Growth hormone has been linked to certain aspects of cognitive performance as well as improved learning abilities. Growth hormones have also been associated with mood regulation, affecting an individual's emotional well being, as well as influencing the effectiveness of the body's response to stress. The bottom line is not that we all come to understand or even remember all of this. My point for you is that you are parenting and homeschooling a child who is working hard to figure out how to handle all the changes, those that are seen and those that are unseen. All right, everyone, I'm done with the science. Let's get to the implications from the science and my tips for homeschooling middle school. I'm dividing the discussion into 4 areas: cognitive, social and emotional learning, sometimes called SEL, sex education, and socialization. Cognitive. Because synaptic pruning leads to use it or lose it, what adolescents do with their activities, attention, and interactions shape which connections remain active and therefore will remain existing and which will be pruned and no longer exist. Even taking the research with a grain of salt, this highlights the importance of an education that focuses on the foundations and really, in my mind, and the mind of every brain scientist I looked at, strengthens the argument that children benefit from a broad liberal arts education during middle school. At the same time this pruning is happening, young people begin to want to focus on those areas that interest them most to specialize. It makes teaching the subjects they love so much fun as they delve deep and are passionate about learning them. For subjects they don't love, this means that in most cases you're going to want to hold tight and teach them anyway. If you value learning and your child is giving you pushback about learning something that you feel is important to learn, by all means try to pair it with a passion. However, if it's important to learn, even if they never come to love it, by insisting they do learn it, you're making a statement that will resonate throughout their life about the value you place on the acquisition of knowledge. Every person I know who is homeschooled through middle school, who have kids who are no longer being homeschooled, who have graduated from homeschool, will concur that it can be tough through those times, but though many of us have had our children come back and thank us for sticking with it. Some studies suggest that during growth spurts, there might be a temporary decrease in cognitive performance or a shift in cognitive abilities as the brain allocates resources to support physical growth. Be thoughtful if your child all of a sudden struggles with skills they once mastered. One of the things I like to do when that happened is to move over to something that was a lot easier. So we maybe weren't working on this complicated math concept was an area that my son, if he was going to struggle, would often struggle with. And we would work on language arts, which for him was always really easy. Numerous studies show that when school starts later, middle and high school students tend to get more sleep. And when they tend to get more sleep, their academic performance and overall well-being improve. It can also have positive effects on their mental health and reduce the risk of sleep-related issues, including depression and anxiety. If you're a morning person, this might mean you have to shift to a little later to do school, but make sure that they're getting lots of sleep. The brain really needs sleep as it's going through these periods of intense growth. And if you think something is important to teach, teach it. Even if it's not part of the standard school curriculum, it's middle school that people really start to look at this. I think that you're handcrafting an education. Handcraft one that incorporates the parts that you think are meaningful. And and this becomes critically important as synapses are being pruned. How important is something? Don't just assume that years from now is going to be a better time than right now to teach it. Diagnostic testing can help you teach your child where they are. Middle school is a crucial time for students to take pride in their academic achievements. It helps if their teaching is targeted directly at their level. Doing this increases the likelihood that the student sees themselves as skilled at learning. It also increases their ability to make cross-concept connections as they better understand them. And don't be surprised when the curriculum and program look more advanced and ask more of your child. If they're not ready for the advancement, then either offer more intense and strategic scaffolding or go back to resources designed for late elementary students, early middle school until your child is ready. Soon enough, your adolescent will be ready for more advanced materials as their brain development naturally leads to more sophisticated thinking. This is just the reason that they become more sophisticated is curriculum developers are aware that the middle school brain is ready for more sophisticated materials. As adolescents mature, they often take more risks. For some learners, this leads to students who want to be challenged intellectually. Pay attention if you have one of those children. Make sure they're challenged in a way that leads to sustained growth and connections being made. For these students, you're going to want to ensure they receive a comprehensive education, as these students can be inattentive to the parts that are easy for them and save their focus for the challenging parts. You know how some people say, oh, that class was easy, and they don't get as good a grade. College students, you see this in. If a class is too easy, they often don't get as good a grade, these sorts of students, as they do if a class is really challenging. Look out if you have one of those students that like to challenge themselves academically in this way. Middle school students become better at logical reasoning, analyzing information, and solving problems. That makes this the perfect time for intentional instruction about critical thinking. Choose resources that connect critical thinking and problem-solving tasks to the real world so students recognize the relevance of this learning. Select materials that require explanations, reasoning, and problem-solving. And I think you can look at the world, what we're going through at this time, and recognize that critical thinking is an essential 21st century skill as more and more social media comes to dominate the news. Intellectual discussions can be challenging with this age. My favorite strategy to use is I call reflective learning. This is where you paraphrase back to the student what you heard and then ask if that's what they meant. Then open the conversation up using critical thinking that incorporates facts from good sources. And make sure, if you're not sure, my son's really interesting. He really, when he gets interested in something, he will look. And I have challenged him a couple times, and Then he taught me a thing or two. I was like, oh, those are really good sources. Come bring it on. Let's hear more about this. At a time when some connections are being lost and some strengthened, a mastery approach has significant benefits. This approach ensures learners understand a skill or topic before moving on. When a learner receives an evaluation, they're encouraged to continue working on a limited number of areas that they haven't mastered, and then they're allowed to resubmit their work after they've done this. The work is reevaluated with no penalty for not learning it the first time. If the learner is still struggling with an area, there should be targeted intervention to help them master the concept. So think about it. So you've got synapses and they're making connections. And what you realize when somebody struggles with something is they're not making that connection. Okay. And so you want to continue with the mastery approach. And if what they're learning is important, and I hope it is, if they're spending their time working on it, if what they're learning is important, you want to say, wait a minute, let's work on that. And then, and don't, reason I say having them work on a limited number of skills, if somebody's struggling with something, you want to narrow the focus in so that it's really targeted for what they need to be working on, and then you can go on from there. Often when someone is struggling to make a bigger connection, there's one or two or three things that they've missed. And so basically you're going back and you're making sure that that connection is made, that those synapses aren't lost. Teaching certain high school skills in middle school can better prepare students for the challenges that they'll face in their later academic years. By introducing these skills early, students can develop a strong foundation and become more successful in high school and college. It's been shown that middle school students who work on to be high school ready are 50% more likely to succeed at a higher level, to succeed in their freshman courses in college. So these working on these skills in middle school can have long-ranging effects. These skills should include time management, organization, note-taking, research skills, writing skills, critical thinking, and problem solving, and setting and meeting goals. Hey, it's a lot of executive functioning skills just mentioned. As the brain strengthens important informational pathways, it's also a good idea to work on the learning skills of metacognition. This is where you help somebody retrieve information that's been retained. Hey, opening up those highways, those pathways, thinking about your thinking. Also incorporate balanced multimodal learning so that they are also working to be strong at in all four learning modalities. That is a talk I'm giving tomorrow, by the way. And then executive functioning skills. Whew. Social and emotional learning. I know there's a lot on the cognition. I almost broke that slide up. I hope you were taking notes. If you weren't, in about 3 weeks, this will be available to rewatch if you want to go back and rehear that particular section. Okay, use it or lose it does not just apply to academics. Social and emotional learning involves explicit teaching that helps individuals understand their feelings and motives, as well as to manage emotions, impulses, and behaviors. This is a very emotional time in someone's life. So some education, some social and emotional learning can really benefit the individual. This instruction can be through curriculum, informal discussion. Now, I do recommend that if you choose an informal approach, that you give some thought to what topics you think your child might benefit from having instruction around. But before I get to social and emotional learning, I want to point out the importance of making sure that your child has a soft place to land. Your adolescent will say things, do things, and push your buttons. They'll campaign hard for more independence that they are absolutely positively sure they're ready for when they're not. Just remember that you are their rock in their soft place to land. That's kind of a funny mix. And in many cases, you are the safest person to blow off steam that is created in the chaotic working of their brain as it grows and matures. Hang tight. If when they fall, be there. And when their wings take them places you were not sure they could, celebrate right along with them. This is a vulnerable time in a person's life. Having trusted adults who are there to help navigate really makes a difference. It also provides a model for what to do in the future when their children go through this chaotic period. Remember, you are the model for your child about how to talk to themselves and about themselves. By providing this safe space, you can really help them navigate this challenging time. Maybe that's why research has shown that social and emotional learning improves social skills, including minimizing bullying, and helps kids to understand how to respond to it. As a part of this, social and emotional learning should include instructions about online etiquette. Studies show that including intentional social and emotional learning during the middle school years leads to a more positive self image and self management. It also fosters positive mental health, contributing to a growth mindset, which leads to long term success in life, work, and school. Please, please make sure that whatever you choose, whatever resources you choose, have include information about inclusiveness, diversity, and empathy for others. Their bodies are changing and hormone levels are fluctuating, and hey, they're thinking about it. Sometimes I see things about the sexual education of young people that make me want to ask the people developing those materials what kind of thoughts and feelings they were having during and after puberty. I mean, I just want to look at them and say, get real, because their children are having some of those same thoughts and feelings and some different ones too. It's really important that you include sex education that is accurate, age appropriate, comprehensive, and not judgmental. It's important to include information about sexual health, relationships, and responsible decision making. Providing this information has been shown to benefit body autonomy and consent, and to lower the likelihood of unwanted pregnancies. It also has been shown to reduce the incidence of sexually transmitted disease as kids learn about it. They're not told, just don't have it and you won't get it. A comprehensive sex education curriculum typically includes discussions about sexual orientation, gender identity, and LGBTQ plus issues. This fosters understanding, empathy, and respect for diverse identities and experiences. Sex education can help dispel myths and misinformation about sexuality, reproductive health, and gender roles. By promoting evidence based information, it contributes to a more open and inclusive society. I want to encourage you to not just rely on curriculum. Make yourself available to answer the questions that come up, even if doing so makes you uncomfortable. I ask you, who do you want your child to get answers from? You, a trusted person in your life, or the internet? I honestly answered, to the best of my ability, every question my son had. This all happened, this particular conversation I'm going to relate to you happened somewhere around sixth grade. When my son asked me, we were out on a walk, and my son casually inserted into the conversation if I knew what pole dancing was, which I then explained to him what pole dancing was. While he was at it, he wanted to know what oral sex was too. I explained that to him as well. Since we were having that conversation, I made sure to explain how to prevent unwanted pregnancies, something at the time that he was really embarrassed that I brought up. And when I told him that most of the time people have sex, it was because it feels good, not because they want to have a baby, he told me that was TMI, Mom. TMI. Make yourself open, honest, and available. any learning done around socialization can be done with social and emotional learning. SEL is important, social and emotional learning is important, and so is the opportunity to work on socialization skills, which means your middle school aged child needs a peer group. This can be done in person or online, however you can make it happen. There are some really nice online platforms now for kids. And I have heard that from a couple of kids in the middle school age group that they really enjoy them. As a part of online learning, make sure you cover digital etiquette. I'm coming back to that. It's the second time I brought that up, but that's really important. According to my adult son, the bullying happens. If your child is on Discord or is in anything that's an open forum, bullying happens. And it's important that your child knows how to deal with it.